Time. There are some responses by theologians, and as you might expect, right, they never take this kind of stuff lying down. So one of the most popular objections, and usually the first one you hear, is, oh, well, God wants us to believe through free will. He doesn't want to make you believe in Him. Okay. Well, but believing on the basis of evidence is compatible with free will. Right? God doesn't have to force you to do anything. All He has to do is give you evidence and then let you make up your mind. For example, when I got up here on the stage, I was introduced, I came out, and everybody here in this auditorium believes that I exist. Okay? I didn't take away your free will. You still have it. Okay? So if I can convince you that I exist without taking away your free will, certainly God can convince you that God exists without taking away your free will. He just has to do something that I can do. Show up. Right? That's it. Just has to show up. Okay. So when someone says, well, God wants you to believe through free will, fine. Let him show up. I'll believe. God has an unknown purpose for not providing sufficient evidence for His existence. Right? It's like, I don't know why He's not showing up, but He's got some darn good reason. Really? Okay, well, if that's your explanation, why doesn't God show up and just show us that He exists? Well, I would say, well, you know what? That's no different than saying, I don't have an answer, right? If I say, well, why doesn't God show up and prove that He exists? I know. I don't know. Right? That's basically what this answer is. If someone says, well, I don't know His reason, that's like saying, I don't know. Okay, well, if you don't know, thank you for the concession, because this looks like this argument is going to win after all. And if God doesn't want to reveal Himself, He must have some other goal that's more important than the salvation of billions of people all over the planet, okay? Because there's lots of people that live their entire lives and die without believing in whatever God is in question. In the Bible Belt, it would be the Christian God, right? And so if God doesn't want to reveal Himself to millions and millions of people, and then they die and go to hell, well, gosh, what does that tell you about God's priorities? Okay? That makes God look rather monstrous. So that undermines God's goodness. So if you want to, if someone tells you, oh, well, God doesn't want to show up because He's got some other things going on, right? I don't know, he's got some other priorities. Okay. I guess salvation isn't all that important. And also that the fact that theologians can't figure out why God isn't showing up suggests that there isn't a good reason. The unknown purpose defense, as it's called, saying, well, I don't know why. Okay, well, that's because you can't think of a good answer because there isn't one, right? There isn't a good answer as to why God wouldn't show up and prove His existence. Okay, let's look at something else called the argument from scale. This one, I didn't used to like, but then I started using it on people, and I like it. It started having some effect on people. So this one goes, it's very simple and straightforward. Look, if God exists, then He has the following set of properties. This is from Nicholas Everett, a professor in the UK. He says He's omnipotent and omniscient, so He's all-knowing, all-powerful, and so forth. He believes that human beings are the pinnacle of His creation. Okay? And that's pretty standard among believers as well. Like, we are the pinnacle of creation. God really thinks better of us, for example, than of the chimps or dolphins or whatever. And He has the intention of creating an environment that will be specifically for humans to inhabit. And many believers, in fact, will cite Genesis or other parts of the Bible to suggest that, look, all of this stuff, this whole universe was made for us. We have dominion over it. We're in control of it. He gave it to us, right? Okay, so if God exists, He loves humans, and we create the universe for them. So what kind of universe would God create? Whoops. This little clicker is giving me some trouble here. Okay, God loves humans and would create the universe for them. In other words, God would make a user-friendly universe for humans. Okay? Built to human scale. Humans would be at the center of it so they can have easy access to all the parts of it and so on. If God is building something for us, then one would think that then we would be able to use it easily, right? If it's custom made for us, okay? Well, and if it's made for us, then you make it, put us in it, no problem. It seems like it wouldn't exist for a long time without us. But what do we find when we look at the universe, okay? Let's look at the cosmic calendar. Okay. Now this is something from, did anybody here see the Cosmos series? But a couple of them now. A wonderful series. If you have not seen this series, I highly recommend you take a look at it. There's the old version with Carl Sagan, and then the newer version with... you're up on that. Okay. So, here's what the way this cosmic calendar works. Imagine the existence of the universe spread out evenly over a 12-month calendar. So that the first moment of the universe existing would be the first moment, the first second of January 1st, okay? And then you spread the existence of the universe evenly over the calendar so that the present moment is December 31st at 11:59 p.m., right before midnight. So we have January, let's say, is the first 12th of the existence of the universe. Okay, so let's take a look here. This is January. Now we're going to ask ourselves, I don't know if you can see that dot here, right? We're going to ask ourselves, when did humans show up in this thing that was created for them? Well, not in January, not in the first 12th of the existence of the universe, okay? So if we go to February, right? No human beings. We go to March, no human beings. Right? So that's a fourth of the existence of the universe. Humans aren't even there yet. What about April? No, there's no humans. May? No. June? No. June 30th. Halfway through the year. No human beings. Half of the existence of the universe. Human beings aren't even there yet, okay? July? No. August? Nobody. September? October? No. October 31st, Halloween? Nobody comes to the party. Nobody there, okay? October. November? No human beings. Thanksgiving? Nobody came. December? Well, wait a minute. So we went through 11/12 of the existence of the universe. So far, no human beings. If we don't show up in December, we're just not here, right? Okay, so let's take a look at the last one here. December. Let's go half the month there to the 14th. Approximately half the month. Nobody's there yet. What? Wait, we've gone through 11 of the 12 months, half of the last month, no human beings. Let's take a look here. Oh, look here. Finally, December 15th, we get a few vertebrates showing up, or actually just some things with cartilage or something, right? Then 17th, we get some vertebrates. We get some plants. Okay. First dinosaurs on Christmas Eve. What a good present, right? Then we get our mammalian ancestors appear. Now there's a Christmas present, but still no human beings. Okay. We go through the 28th. Nothing. The 29th, dinosaurs wiped out. We missed them. Did you look at that? They show up, they're gone. We're still not here. We're still not in the universe. So then finally, 10:15, apes appear. Not humans, right? But apes appear. First human ancestors to walk upright at 9:24 p.m. Okay, so most of that day there still weren't any humans. Anatomically, modern humans appear at 11:54 p.m. Okay, and then the invention of writing, pyramids, and then the curved elections. So, if someone is going to say the universe was made for us, I say, really? It sure doesn't look it. If you look at the existence of the universe, most of the time we weren't there. So how can you arrogantly say that the universe was made for us if we're not in it for the vast, overwhelming majority of the time that it's been around? That just doesn't look like it makes sense. What about how big the universe is? Wow. Look at this, you are here. This little section here can fit in this system here. That can fit in that galaxy. That galaxy can fit among other galaxies. Those galaxies can all fit in this other cluster of galaxies that fit in something else. And here's the universe. This thing is so enormous. Look at it, 91 billion light years across. You and I will not even see 1 billionth of that, okay, in our lifetime. We won't visit any of that. The vast majority of humans that have ever existed will never see even half of it. So it was built for us. Looks like we can't really get around it. Now, you say it was built for us. The philosopher David Hume, you see the dates there, he's an 18th century figure. He said, if you want to judge what something is for, look and see what it does. If somebody builds a machine and you want to know what the machine is for, then you look and see what it does. And that'll tell you, oh, that's what it's for. I see it at work now. I see that's what the machine's purpose is. Okay? Someone who says the universe was made for us, they're talking about it's a created object, it's made for us. They're talking about it like it's an artifact, a machine. Okay, let's take a look. What does it do? What does the universe do? Okay? Let's look around. What does it do? Well, sometimes people say, well, it was made to support life. Really? It was made to support life? Most of it doesn't seem to have life. If the universe was made to support life, whoever made it sucks at that job, okay? That really sucks at that job. That is the worst life-sustaining machine creator you could possibly imagine, because the overwhelming majority of it would kill us if we went out there, okay? We just can't live in most of the universe, as far as we can tell. So for someone to say, oh, the universe was made for us, really, how come if we just step a little bit outside our little domain, we die, okay? It is not life-sustaining. Most of it doesn't have life. So if we look around the universe objectively, dispassionately, and ask ourselves, what does this thing seem to be doing? Having life is not part of what we see. Because we only have this tiny, itty-bitty, infinitesimal section of the universe that has life. And the rest of it can't support life, at least as far as we know. So, what is someone going to say about this? Well, here's what they usually say. Oh, well, don't look at most of what exists. Just look at the land. Okay, just look at the land. Or just look at the earth. Just look at the earth. Okay, well, the earth is mostly water on its surface. Oh, so I guess whoever made all of this stuff, I mean, if we're ignoring almost everything that exists, just looking at the earth, I guess it was made for aquatic animals. No, the person would probably say. Ignore most of what exists and ignore most of your own planet and just look at the land. Oh, okay, let's take a look at the land. What do you find in the land? Well, the life there is mostly insect life by weight. Right? So I guess God made everything for insects. No, they say, ignore most of what exists, ignore most of your own planet's surface, ignore most of the life that's on the land. In other words, just keep going till you get to humans and then stop. Right? That's basically what they're saying. So again, we look at what is the universe made for? Sure doesn't look like human beings are in that equation. Because even on the earth here, most of it is inhospitable. I know we can't really live in the water, and that's most of it. So made for us doesn't seem to be in any way related to human beings. So, did I skip something? Oh, so the argument in its form would be, if God exists and he loves humans and would create the universe for them. If God loves humans and would create the universe for them, then he'd make a user-friendly universe for humans. The universe is not user-friendly for humans, so therefore God does not exist. There you go. All right. And this one's a good one. I like using that. Let's take a look at Michael Tooley's, we'll take a look at his argument from physical minds. Okay? Tooley says, look, when we look at minds, at least as far as science is concerned, they're all purely physical in nature, okay? They're purely physical in nature, or else causally dependent on something physical. In other words, for us, it's your brain, okay? If your brain goes, there goes your mind, okay? If your brain goes, that's what science tells us. They examine all brain damage, suggests that, which leads to thinking damage, suggests that your thinking is very much dependent on your physical brain. So, the physical states of your brain change your mental states in all kinds of ways. Science has been studying this for a century very carefully, including dissection and so forth and so on. All kinds of not so much experiments, but all kinds of procedures being done on people with who are having brain operations done and so forth. You could tap a certain part of the brain and conjure up a memory and so forth. There was one brain surgeon, Jose Delgado, that he poked somebody's brain, and the person all of a sudden heard Guns N' Roses. During surgery, man, poked him and said, "Hey, wasn't it you?" And of course, there wasn't a band there or anything. You know, nobody was playing music. It suggests that our thinking is physical. Okay. So, if that's the case, and that's what science tells us over and over, the more they study the brain, the more it looks like something physical, then we can say all minds known to exist have a material basis. Okay. Therefore, now this is an inductive argument, based on what we know about minds, okay, probably all minds have a material basis. Okay? So that's what science tells us. All minds have a material basis that we know of. So probably all minds everywhere have a material basis. That's what we know about minds. They're material based. God is said to be an immaterial mind, therefore probably God does not exist. Now, it may not prove that there's no God, but it makes it probable that there's no God if you're saying, oh, there's some thinking going on without a brain present. Okay, that's not what we know about minds. That's like saying there's some running going on without movement. You know, something like that. There's some arm wrestling going on without arms. You know, something like that. Okay. The incoherent properties, attributes. Ooh, I did have sound effects. Okay. When a concept is incoherent, what does that mean? It means that it has properties that contradict itself. Okay. And this means that the properties can't all be true at the same time. If one is true, the other ones aren't. Okay, that's what it means for something to have incoherent properties. If the concept of God turns out to be incoherent, then that means it's impossible for that being to exist. In the same way that we would say, look, it's impossible for there to be a round square. It's not because we looked all over and we didn't find any, right? That's not why we say there aren't round squares. We say there aren't round squares because if it's round, it's not square. If it's square, it's not round. These things contradict. So, if the concept of God is of something that's contradictory, we don't have to look to see whether it exists, because if it's contradictory, we know that it can't exist. It just isn't possible for that thing to be. So the argument looks like this. Any being with contradictory attributes cannot exist. God is a being with contradictory attributes or properties. Therefore, God can exist. Well, contradictory attributes, what do you mean? Okay, well, let's take a look at some examples. Well, first let's get clear that there's different kinds of knowledge. Factual or propositional knowledge that you can express as a true sentence. A particular fact, George Washington was the first president of the United States, and so forth. There's procedural knowledge, knowing how to perform some skill, like juggling or whatever. You can know all about factually what juggling entails. And until you've actually done it and practiced it, you don't know how to juggle. Okay, that's what this is talking about. And then there's direct acquaintance, being immediately aware of what that experience is like. Okay. So, human beings can know by direct acquaintance, know the experience of finding out that he or she has made a mistake. I can know what it's like to have made a mistake. But if God is omniscient, right? Oh, this is what theologians say, then God can't make mistakes, despite the flood. God, that was supposed to be an eraser, right? But aside from that, God can't make mistakes. So God can never find out what it's like to discover having made a mistake. Right? So human beings can know something by direct acquaintance that God can't know. I can have an experience God can't have. Learning. I can learn. I can just learn something new. Hey, look, I can pick up an almanac. Hey, I didn't know that was a monetary unit in such a country. Right? I learned something. God can't learn, so I can do something God can't do. And I can know what it's like to learn by experience. God can't do that. I can be an atheist. I can know what it's like to be an atheist. God can never know that. Okay? So I can know things God can't know. But God is said to be omniscient. So it seems like the concept of God is incoherent. I can sin, according to the theologians. They probably think I do it all the time. Not nearly as often as you might think. But anyway, I can sin, God can't sin, so I can do something God can't do. Okay, it's very simple. There's tons of examples. So if beings that are not omnipotent can do things an omnipotent being can't do, that suggests the concept is incoherent. Swimming. This is knowledge by acquaintance. I can know what it's like to swim. God doesn't have a body, he's immaterial, and God can't know what it's like to swim. One time somebody said, well, Jesus had a body. I said, yeah, he didn't swim, he walked on top. Sorry, that doesn't count as swimming. Transcendence. God is transcendent, he doesn't have a body, he's outside of space and time, and so on. But also people say, it even says in the Bible, God is everywhere. So he's outside of space and time, because he's transcendent, and he's everywhere in space and time. Those two things don't add up together, so therefore it's incoherent. Lots and lots of examples, but this is the kind of example you can give where you say, look, if someone says, can you prove there's no God? Yeah, if you accept that God is omnipresent and transcendent at the same time, that's contradictory. There can't be something like that. That's like saying there's a round square. It's a proof. There can't be a being that satisfies these criteria. Okay, well let's look at, in fact, incoherence with single attributes. This one fellow here, Roland Perchetti, has the impossibility of omniscience argument. I found this very interesting. By the way, I could not find anywhere a picture of Mr. Perchetti, who passed away in '95. So I put a picture of Wittgenstein instead. Can God be omniscient, all-knowing? Okay. What does it mean to say some being is all-knowing? Knows all the facts there are in the universe or whatever? Okay. But here's the thing. Even granting that a being could know all the possible facts that you and I might be able to discover, could a being know all there is to know and know that that's all there is to know? In other words, even if you know everything in the universe, could you know that that's all there is to know? Okay? Well, Wittgenstein, who's a 20th century philosopher, wrote in one of his works, and this is taken to be a very insightful thing that he said, in order to be able to draw a limit to thought, we should have to find both sides of the limit thinkable, i.e. we should have to think what cannot be thought. In other words, even if you knew that this is all that I know, right, you come up to the limit of your thought, this is all that I know. How do you know there's not yet something else that you don't know? You would have to be aware of something beyond your thought, which is impossible, because once you're aware of it, then it's no longer beyond your thought. It's like, oh, there was something I missed. Okay, how do you know there's not something else or something else? Right? You can't know that. Right? So even if God knows everything there is to know, he couldn't know that he knows everything there is to know. Okay? He would have to know that there are no facts unknown to me. How could you know that there are no unknown facts? Well, you can't know that, because they're unknown by definition. So, God, even if God did know all the facts, there's one fact he couldn't know, and he couldn't know the fact that he knows all the facts. Right? So, here's how this argument would work. God exists, God is omniscient. By definition, if God is omniscient, then God knows all the facts. God knows all facts, then God knows the fact that he is omniscient. But, according to what we've been suggesting here, God can't know that he's omniscient. Therefore, God can't be omniscient. And if he exists, he's omniscient. If he can't be omniscient, then he doesn't exist. There you go. There's also some other arguments, by the way, that suggesting that God can't know all the facts. That is much more complicated, so I didn't do that. But there's another one by Patrick Graham that I would recommend. Okay, let's go to Gilbert Fulmer's argument. That a creator God can't fully explain the universe and all of its laws. Okay, I thought this was very interesting, and I was able to find a picture of Mr. Fulmer. If he looks kind of, he lives in Texas. So anyway, I used to live in Texas. I always look kind of, anyway, if God is a creator, God willed the universe and all its laws into existence. That's pretty standard for believers to assert, okay? In fact, they like to say that. Oh, look, all these laws, isn't it wonderful? God made all these laws for us and so forth. And if you mention, gravity and such, oh yeah, God made gravity and so on. So they like to assert not just that God created created the universe, but created all the natural laws. Okay. Now, here's the thing, though. Here was Fulmer's insight. He says, look, why does God's will affect the world? If God wills the universe into existence, and let's say wills gravity to exist, or wills the laws of thermodynamics and so forth, why is this working for him? How does he have this power? Okay. If God can impose his will on the world, it's a natural law that whatever he wills occurs. Okay? It will be a fact of the universe. Now, here's what Fulmer is suggesting. He says, look, God can't make himself have the power to will things into existence. Because to do that, he would already have to have the power to will himself to do things, right? To make whatever his will is occur. So God just has his power. He can't make himself have the power, okay? So, because he would have to have the power to be able to make himself have the power. So he just has the power. It's beyond his ability to not have the power, right? So if it's something beyond human agency, then what Fulmer says, that makes it into a natural law, okay? The fact that events always occur according to God's will needs an explanation. But God's ability to effect change becomes a natural law when it's independent of his will. By natural law here, what we mean is a law of cause and effect in the universe that's independent of personal agency. Okay? So God just has his power. He can't change it. He can't affect it. So God didn't make himself have this divine power. Now, here's the argument. God exists and God created the universe and all its laws. If God created the universe and all its laws, then every natural law of the universe is explained by God's will. But God's will can't explain that God has the power to create the universe and all its laws as well. Therefore, God's will is a natural law. Therefore, God's will cannot explain at least one natural law, namely his will. Therefore, not every natural law of the universe is explained by God. Therefore, by first premise, God exists, God created the universe and all its laws. Therefore, God does not exist. I told you these were arcane. Yeah. Probably never heard of this one, right? Of course, Mr. Fulmer, I'm waiting for people to respond. Say something. So write it and tell them, hey, that was interesting. Let's look at Michael Martin's indirect argument from evil. The indirect argument from evil. You've probably heard of the regular old argument from evil. Right? The argument from evil is usually, here's one version of it. If God exists, then there would be no needless suffering in the world. There is needless suffering in the world, therefore God does not exist. So, by the way, this version takes into account that, well, maybe there's some suffering that takes place that is required, that is necessary, and so forth. Like when you go to the dentist, they're going to say, oh, we're going to have to drill, there's going to be some necessary pain so you can avoid some other pain later, and so forth. This one says, maybe some suffering is necessary, but certainly not in the amounts that we see around the world. So this one says there'll be no needless suffering in the world if God existed. There is needless suffering, so God doesn't exist. Now, you've probably heard theologians respond to the argument from evil in a number of different ways. Far and away, the most popular way of responding to the argument from evil is to give the Freewill Defense and say, well, evil is the result of free will and so forth. There's all kinds of problems with using free will in that regard, but you're probably familiar with most of those and so forth. Or saying, oh, well, here's why there's evil in the world, there's original sin and so forth and so on. That doesn't seem to work either. And I think the fact that you are, or at least many of you here, are non-believers suggests that usually non-believers think that there aren't any good responses to the argument from evil. In fact, I even know of some theists who believe in God that concede, I don't know any good responses to the argument from evil, and so forth. Okay, so we've heard lots of responses by theologians. We think that those responses don't work. Okay? By the way, is there anyone here, just out of curiosity, is there anyone here who's a non-believer? You don't believe in God, but you think that some of the responses to the argument from evil do work? In other words, you don't think the argument from evil is any good? Anyone here like that? Yeah? Okay.
He's Catholic.
Oh, there you go. Okay. Oh, you place a lot of stock in this one, huh? Okay. But I used to be in that camp. I used to think that the argument from evil, well, it wasn't all that great, because I thought some of these responses to the argument from evil were actually pretty good responses. I thought other arguments for atheism were better, so I was still an atheist. But I thought that these responses weren't particularly good. I've changed my mind on that. The more I studied the theological responses to evil, the more I became convinced that, in fact, you know what, these responses aren't really any good. Does that need some elaboration? Is there anybody who... Are you familiar with the Freewill Defense? Usually? Yeah? Who has not heard of the Freewill Defense? Okay, very good. Original sin? Okay. So we tend to think, as non-believers, we usually think that these don't work. But you know what? Here's the thing. You collect those failed responses together, and you can use that as an independent atheological argument. In other words, an argument for atheism. So let's see how that would work. Okay. So here's what Michael Martin put together. By the way, Michael Martin published a number of really interesting books on atheism, most of which, by the way, were intended for professional philosophers. But if you have the time and the patience, I would highly recommend his 1990 book, Atheism, A Philosophical Justification. It's a gigantic, like 400-plus page book with all kinds of different arguments against theism and for atheism. It's the Bible of atheism. So I can use that analogy. Okay, so here's what he came up with regard to this argument. He says, okay, suppose that T, whatever T is a theodicy like the Freewill Defense or original sin or whatever. An explanation of God's ways to humanity, a justification for allowing evil to exist. Okay, the existence of evil falsifies the hypothesis that God exists, okay, unless assumption T is true, okay? Unless assumption, and so in other words, the argument from evil would prove that God doesn't exist unless one of these theodicies really is correct, like the Freewill Defense, the original sin, you know, whatever it is you're using. However, he says, repeated attempts to establish T, whatever theodicy is you're looking at, have failed, okay? And we're not just talking about a couple of attempts here or there, or a couple of hundred, but thousands and thousands over millennia. Okay? In other words, theologians have been working on trying to explain away evil ever since this was brought up as a problem for theism. And when was it brought up as a problem? Thousands of years ago. Okay? We have a statement by the Greek philosopher Epicurus from 2,300 years ago, where he explains the problem of evil in pretty much the same way we would explain it today. So this problem has been around as long as there has been monotheism. Okay? Before monotheism, when there were a bunch of different gods with polytheists, and they would say, oh, well, there's some good gods and some bad gods. If something bad happened, somebody could easily explain it by, oh, well, there's some good gods and some bad ones, and the bad ones did that. And the good ones couldn't stop them. You know, something like that, like something that might happen in the Avengers. You know, people are fairly evenly matched. You can't be everywhere at once. But as soon as somebody said, look, there is a being that is, first of all, it's the only God. There's just one, monotheism. And he's all powerful. He can do anything. He's all knowing. So he knows when somebody's about to do something evil and so forth. And he's all good, i.e. opposed to evil. As soon as somebody said that, then you have a problem. And so theologian, and so monotheism is thousands of years old. Thousands of years of theologians working on explaining why bad things happen to good people and so forth have failed. Therefore, there is no positive evidence that God exists. Therefore, probably God doesn't exist. Okay. After thousands of years, wouldn't God have given somebody a little cheat sheet or something? Here's the explanation. That hasn't happened. So therefore, there probably isn't an explanation for evil. Given that, since we have the problem of evil, would falsify theism, unless you had a good explanation, You don't have a good explanation? Okay, theism's false. There you go. Very simple. So, here are the arguments we looked at. Ted Drange's argument from non-belief, Nicholas Evans' argument from scale, Michael Toomey's argument from physical minds, the incoherent attributes argument, Crocetti's impossibility of omniscience argument, Fulmer's argument that a creator God can't fully explain the universe and its laws, and Michael Martin's indirect argument from evil. Thank you. Are there any questions about any of these? Anybody have any questions about some of these arguments? Yes, sir. Oh, well, that was great. Yes, sir.
You said there was an eighth one?
Yeah, an eighth one. I don't know if you want to see it, but yeah, I have another one. I always have more. There's tons of these little arguments that a lot of non-believers are unaware of. Did you want to see the other one? Do we have one? Go ahead. All right. Well, I'll pass around a tip jar. And we get $100. Okay, let's go ahead and see the next one. The argument number 8. Okay, the setup. Okay. Many believers would affirm the following 3 statements. Okay, first, any act that God approves is morally permissible. Right? I've heard that so many times. It's like George W. Bush saying, hey, if the president does it, it's not illegal, kind of thing. Right? If God does it, it's not wrong, okay? Because God is all good. So any act that God approves is morally permissible. And it's morally wrong for anyone to commit acts that violate our moral principles. Okay? The Bible tells us that God often condones or commands acts that are morally wrong, or at least according to us. Most believers, right, especially fundamentalists, would affirm all of these, okay, believe it or not. And you may be wondering about this last one. I've had lots and lots of believers tell me, when I ask them about some of the genocide and all kinds of stuff that happens in the Hebrew Bible or the Old Testament, they'll say, yep, but it was okay back then, God did it, it's fine, and so forth. These statements contradict each other. So if you're trying to affirm all of these, you're going to run into a problem. Like, so the argument is this: if God exists, then everything is morally permissible. Okay? You often hear the opposite, right? A lot of people like to paraphrase Jean-Paul Sartre and say, if God doesn't exist, everything is permitted. Well, actually, you look at the Bible, I think the opposite is the case. Is if God is existing, then everything is morally permissible, at least by God. See, God can do anything He wants. I've had lots of believers tell me this. Why, we are the clay, He's the potter, we can't say anything to Him. Well, I'm speaking clay right here, because I'm saying there's something wrong with that. Not everything is morally permissible, therefore there is no God. Okay? So let's take a look at, so God exists and He's the source of morality. No action is off limits. But not even God, here's the crux of this argument, not even God can make immoral actions become moral. And that's the heart and soul, so to speak, of this particular argument. There are things that many believers, especially from the Bible, will assert and say that God did this, but it's wrong. Let's take a look at some of the biblical atrocities. I know you folks love this thing. There's lists and lists of these all over the internet. God commanding genocide. Okay, this is stuff that our society says is wrong. People just commit going in a war zone even and just killing everything that breathes and so forth. In the Bible, they say. I've heard some believers tell me, "Oh well, they had to kill all those people because they were terrorists. Right? They were terrorists and so forth." Really? But God was commanding them to kill the animals, their cattle and so forth. Were those terroristic cattle? Right? I mean, that doesn't make any sense. This is just wholesale slaughter. We say it's wrong. God can't make that right. Okay? That's the assertion of this argument. If God exists, then it would be okay to go into an area and kill everybody. Men, women, children, infants, and so forth. But that isn't right. So therefore, there's no God. Things like slavery. Leviticus tells us explicitly that slavery is not only okay, it's something God is saying, hey, here's where you go get your slaves. Go get them over there. Right? And this was not temporary slavery. This was some slavery that you could have slaves for life, just like we had in the United States. Okay? Sometimes believers will try to fool you and they'll say, oh, well, the slavery in the Bible was just temporary. It was okay. It was just like being an indentured servant for a few years. That's false. That was only the fellow slaves, fellow Israelite slaves that were temporary. The foreign slaves were for life. Okay? But slavery is wrong. Okay? Our society fought a war over that. We decided that's wrong. Not even God can make slavery right, can make it moral. Oppressing women, and so forth. Yeah, there's all kinds of misogyny all over the Bible, as many of you know. Not even God can make that okay. Cannibalism, believe it or not. God decides to punish some people by having them engage in cannibalism. I don't know about you, but I think that's wrong. Our society thinks that's wrong. So not even God can make cannibalism okay. So interestingly, the heart of this argument is, for many believers like to say, oh, well, you need an objective, absolute system of ethics. That's why you shouldn't be an atheist, because these are all subjective morals. And morality is a totally different topic about atheistic morals, but it's certainly defensible to have non-theistic morals and so forth. But many of them say you need absolute morals, inviolable, that apply to everybody and so forth and so on. But then all of a sudden they want to endorse principles that we think this is just wrong. And if they say, well, if God says that it's okay, well, okay, then you don't have an absolute principle. Then you are violating principles of ethics. And you think that these principles of ethics are not universal and don't cover everybody and so forth. If God can do, here's the thing you need to tell them. If God can do anything whatsoever, and he's not constrained by morality, then what's the difference between worshiping your God and worshiping an evil demon? If God is not constrained by morality and can do anything at all, then what's the difference between worshiping your God and worshiping an evil demon? Oh, the demon does bad things. Yeah, but you just said God could do those same things. If God is not constrained by morality, then he's no different than an evil demon. So, now here's the list of arguments we saw. All the other 7 that I said before, and the moral argument. Thank you. Well, are there any questions about some of these? Yes, ma'am.
Would you ever do a formal debate against some common Christians?
Oh, yeah. Yes, I have done debates all over the country on the existence of God, as well as on atheistic versus Christian ethics and so forth.
Oh, it would be fun to get you against Robert Floyd, but I think probably consider.
He would never do it. He would never do it. So I would have reason and logic on my side. We just have God. Right. But you know what? If you can arrange it, I will be there. Right. If you could move heaven and earth, so to speak, I would love to do it. So I'm certainly up for that. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Question pertains to the previous question. Exactly who are you talking about with the...
Oh, Ronnie Floyd? Yeah, he's a prominent preacher here.
6'5" over Jesus.
Yeah, he's the one that has the church on 49, right off of 49, that has the giant crosses. He's the president of the Southern Baptist Convention, the world's largest organization of Southern Baptist churches. So he's a local fellow. And he has a lot of satellite churches around as well. You see Cross Church.
Franchise.
There we go, yeah, where he appears on the screen. And in fact, he has so many churches, he has a helicopter take him in between churches on Sunday. That's how busy the fellow is. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Even these arcane arguments for atheism make sense to me. And I can't figure out why people who are otherwise seemingly sensible, thinking of my own family members, aren't convinced by these arguments, and so that they become atheists. Why do these other seemingly good and sensible people not become atheists? when they consider all of these arguments?
Well, I can tell you, I have had success in changing the minds of some theists by using arguments like this, but I can on the internet, because I tell you this, here's what it takes. It takes not just an argument, but it takes time. It takes someone who is heavily invested in a particular position and who thinks, you know, this is what good people believe. They believe this. And then you come along and tell them, well, you know what, that's false. They're not just going to say, well, yeah, okay, I'm throwing it out the window. It's going to take time, and it's going to take a change of heart, so to speak. It's going to take a change of attitude. It's going to take getting them to see that there is a possibility that good people can believe otherwise. They have to, well, we're in a political season already, believe it or not. And you know, just think of the people you argue with about who you're going to vote for and so forth, and you give them all kinds of reasons, and they say, you're just wrong, that's just false, you know, Fox News told me this, or you know, whatever. They have a different set of sources for information. They have a mindset that is not going to let you win particularly easily. And even if they don't have an answer, they always have the, I'll get back to you on that. I'll check. I'm going to go ask my pastor. And there was, when I was a grad student here, I got my PhD from the U of A, there was a woman down the hall from me who was a very devout Bible believer. And she would come to my office virtually every day when I had an office in Old Main. She'd come there and ask me questions about atheism and so forth. And I would give her all these arguments, and she would give me the, I'm going to go ask my pastor. And then she'd come back, I'm going to go ask my pastor. I'd give her some Bible contradictions. I'm going to go ask my pastor. Then finally, she didn't come to my office for a while, and I went over and asked her, hey, how come you don't come now? And she said, well, my pastor told me not to talk to you anymore. And I said, well, what was his answer to, you know, such and such a Bible contradiction? And I gave her a really good one. And she said, well, he told me to go work at a food bank. I said, what does that got to do with this? He said, he said, if I work at the food bank, then eventually I'll just see that there's no problem. Right? And so that's what we're up against. It takes time, and it takes, you know, some pressure. You have to constantly be reminding the people and so forth, say, hey, what do you think of what I told you last month? Or what do you think of what I told you last year and so forth? And then perhaps there'll be some change. And yeah.
And how important is it for more people to become atheists when you consider the state of the world of ISIS and the dangers of fanatical religions?
Well, I think it's very important because I think, as you'll see lots of memes on the internet to this very effect, that religion belongs to the infancy of humanity. Back when people were looking for answers and they didn't really have the tools to get the answers that we have now. And so religion belongs to a set of explanations that I believe are obsolete. And unfortunately, because ethics is bound in there in part of those answers that people got, we need to divorce ethics from religion. And I think the only way to do that is for religion to pass away. And that's happening. Okay, we're having an atheist convention here. Just 20 years ago, this might have been impossible. It's the attitude of people in the United States has changed. In Europe, it's already changed. There are fewer and fewer people believing in God. There's only one country that still has belief in God. It's over 50%, okay, in Europe. And the U.S. is following suit. And so I think that it's very possible certainly possible within our lifetimes, and as old as I am, right, that we will see in the United States belief in God drop to below 50%. I think that's going to happen.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much, Doug, and thank you, everybody. That was a lot of good info. You guys are required to memorize this, by the way, and spread the good word. We're going to take a 7-minute break, just a brief one, if you guys want to come back here as soon as possible. At 5 o'clock, we're going to have Michael and Everhart, so come back.